Hey, Chris, how are you?
Derek, I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. It's so great to finally be talking to you.
Yes, it's took us a little while, hasn't it, to iron it out? But yeah, I'm glad we could make this happen. That's cool.
Yeah, you're here, and that's all that matters. So let me ask you, I'm going to see how good I am at my English geography, right? So you were born in Yorkshire. So is it Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield? Am I right?
Go again.
So is it? Does it go Leeds is north, right? And then Manchester's kind of in the middle. Liverpool this way.
No. So it's those are all actually quite on the same latitude.
Okay.
So I'm actually from East Yorkshire, from a place called Hull.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of on a line with Leeds going across to Manchester.
Yeah, gotcha.
Manchester. Yeah.
I feel like that area is like filled with like some of the best football teams in like the world. Like I feel like if we so I thought I was going to impress you with my English geography. I guess
you did well. You named some northern places, so that was cool. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Chris. In the landscape of like modern composers, like who are some that you are, because you've worked with many, right? Your career spans far past what you've done as just a composer. Who are some of the ones that, and I know there's many, but that I don't want to say gravitate to, but maybe you're not in awe of, but like you kind of, you love the way their music sounds, the way it comes across, the way it looks and feels on screen. Is there anybody out there that you really, I'm sure there's many, but that you had to narrow it down to a bit?
Is it contemporaries or kind of through the pantheon of film music?
You know what? I'll leave that wide open for you to tell me. I'm not going to limit your answer.
I'm always a massive fan of Mr. Silvestri. I think he's the reason, as so many. I know a few of the film composers who live kind of near me, and I think we're all kind of 80s kids. And for us, I think Back to the Future was the movie which drew us into film more than any. Maybe Grease as well, which I watched with my sister about 50 times as a kid, probably more. But I think Alan Silvestri's gift for these just super small melodic fragments, which mean so much, which is difficult to do, and obviously other composers can do this, but it's kind of become out of favor now to write so melodically. But if you think to Back to the Future, there's some amazingly short bursts of music which say so much. It's just what a talent to be able to do that. Encapsulate a feeling, a thought, a motive in 4 seconds of music. I think is extraordinary. But yeah, and then there's I was a massive fan of Johan Johansson.
Prisoners is an amazing soundtrack. That is an amazing soundtrack.
Exactly. There's some stunning work, and I think he sort of reinvented the mold of what film music might be or could be. I guess Sicario as well.
Yes, for sure.
Is an example, and that always kind of that interests me. Is how do we take this mold of film music and break it slightly and do something more interesting and something less generic than what we're used to, right? And to me, even I'm trying to think what I listened to recently, which was absolutely enthralling. I think it was Hilda. Even Chernobyl was just extraordinary.
Joker was great. Yeah,
and Joker. It's it's so sparse yet so kind of it just. But sonically, you mentioned the sonics. I think there, what kind of, it just that stuff is fantastic. I think such a depth to it, but such an economy as well.
Yeah, you brought up Back to the Future. You know what's amazing about his work in that movie? It's like it would have been so easy for a composer's work to get lost in that movie because of how great the vocal music was, the lyrical music was. But Alan's music almost makes the lyrical stuff take a back seat. It's so good in that movie. Like
exactly. Like
like that almost outshines Huey Lewis and all those. That's to support your great point. That's certainly it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's difficult. Those kind of hooky kind of earwormy melodies. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. To compete with those tracks is impressive.
Yeah, and he does a great job of it. And speaking of great job, when I invited you on, I was like, just totally in love with your work. I did not know in my initial email that you had won an Academy Award for Gravity for sound mixing, which belated congratulations. A decade later.
I mean, come on, it's a bit late, Derek. Yeah, I mean, you could do better than that. Jeez.
I apologize, but
no, it's fine.
How cool is that? I mean,
it's kind of cool. It's kind of nuts. Yeah, that was such a great project. It's interesting. I think within a few weeks of starting a film, especially if you're kind of getting on board with the rest of the crew, you kind of know if it's good or bad, right? And people won't admit this, but especially, I've worked on, 50 films thereabouts. So I've got quite a good feeling now of when a film is going to be massive or not. And I think I just saw like literally a minute of Gravity and I was like, this is extraordinary. This is
amazing.
Groundbreaking in so many ways, and I think the sound was one of the ways in which it was groundbreaking, thanks to Alfonso, and because he really pushed us to just to experiment, in the same way as I said, I love that about music when people do stuff which is slightly out of the box. That's what we did with the sound,
It's amazing too. Like when you're nominated, like you never really think you're like, maybe I have a shot. But when they call your name, is it almost surreal? Is it like, what the hell just happened? Is it that kind of feeling?
Yeah, it's completely. I guess if you're like, a seasoned veteran of the Oscars, maybe it'd be different. But for me, it was the first time I'd been there, and we had we'd won the BAFTA award in London.
Yes, which is super.
Yeah. So we kind of had an inkling that it might be on the cards. I guess more than others, maybe we had a sort of intuition that it was kind of possible and maybe likely. But yeah, it's just nuts. I think like Chris Hemsworth handed me the award. So
that's fantastic. Fantastic.
I'm actually taller than Hemsworth, so I think I got one up on him that day. No,
not only are you he's giving you the award, he's reaching up to give you the award.
Yeah, you had to reach up. Yeah, exactly. That's a reach up to give me it. Yeah.
So I have to say I have a love-hate with the Academy. Like, so for films last year, and I swear I'm not saying it's because we're speaking, but like, how is Guy Ritchie's The Covenant not more recognized by like the Academy? Like, it was my top 5, one of the most enjoyable, supremely watchable movies of the year. There was so much to love about this movie, and it's like, it's not the only one. Like Godzilla -1 was another one of my loves of last year that was, for the most part, ignored by the Academy. So I have a love-hate with the Academy. Like, I don't know, like, you'll never convince me that Poor Things is a better or more watchable movie, or Barbie is a better or more watchable movie than The Covenant, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Because, listen, I get it. Movies are subjective. Somebody likes blue, I like the color green. Whatever, I get it. I'm sorry. I thought The Covenant was one of the best movies of the year last year.
Oh, thanks. That's great. Yeah, I'm sure. I agree. I think, I guess is it the right? I don't know. Is it arty enough for the Academy? But then you could say, is Barbie arty enough? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one, and you kind of get a sense of these things again, having worked on quite a lot of these movies, whether the studio is going to start to push it for awards and stuff like that. this, regardless of how successful it is or not. So I guess I don't know, and I don't think Guy's necessarily hungry or motivated by that. So maybe that has a hand in it. He just wants to make great movies. He's not interested in awards. I say that on his behalf. I think. Do you know what I mean? I think other directors are so hungry, they're pushing their machine to do it. But Guy just wheeling out some awesome movies,
Yeah, Naoki Sato's score in Godzilla -1 is like so amazing. I mean, it's on par with what you've been doing this year. I mean, I love it. I mean, that's just the beautiful thing about music. It doesn't have to win awards to be special, right? It is.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Where does your rapport start with Guy? Is it because I was looking at some of his other movies, like I think John Murphy's done a few, Pemberton did a few, Hans did one. Now he's completely, like, you guys make one hell of a team with each other. Like, it's just such wonderful movie making. So how does that rapport start? And clearly it's been building momentum and collectively getting, like, I mean, we're going to get to this last, but some of the reviews of your work on YouTube and watching people's reactions, it's like mind blowing how much how much your music means to them. So just talk about Guy and whatever you wanted to say.
I mean, I met Guy on Aladdin. And I was sort of working with Alan Menken on that score, and I guess we just kind of had a rapport, and I guess I was a little bit cheeky, as we'd say, because he started to shoot The Gentleman, the film, towards the end of that of Aladdin, post production, and I think I just one day said, Guy, if you need any music on that, let me know. And then I got a call like a few weeks later. It was amazing. So I'd been on a bit of a musical journey with Guy through Aladdin, because a lot of the songs were were Alan's originals from, I kind of think what year it was. Was it 94 or something? Early 90s, wasn't it? So they were very jazzy. The whole score was,
right.
Actually, sorry, not the whole score. A lot of the songs were jazzy, and Guy's not always the biggest fan of jazz. In certain situations, sometimes it is. You can't really predict it. So there were a few songs in there we had to, we had to pep them up and modernize them. So I think there was certainly a few versions we did for Guy. So through that process, I really kind of got to know him and got to know his taste and what made him tick. So that was super valuable going into The Gentleman. Having worked with him and Alan, and it was amazing the amount of he put so much trust in his team, which is fantastic. Like, he really lets you kind of bring whatever you want to the table. Like, he'd rather you try something completely wacky than just tread the generic line, whatever it is, not just music. I think with everything, he's so willing to experiment and just try new stuff. And I think musically, and I know he's not a fan of sort of the big overblown kind of Hollywood generic score, may I say? I don't know how to turn that. The stuff that is maybe farmed out a bit too much now.
Right, right.
And so he's always looking for, what we need, an angle on the music. Yeah. We don't just want to regurgitate film scores of the day. And also, let's look back. Oh, sorry, just hit my microphone there. I'm so excited. Let's look back to other music from the past and see what inspires us, and see what we can take from that. So it's been an amazing sort of. I think I'm on my like eighth or ninth projects with Guy now.
Wow.
And each one, but he always keeps you guessing. This is the amazing thing. He, I kind of know his sensibilities, and one of the biggest bits of advice he always gives me is to be bold, right? And I think that goes. I'd give that advice to any composer: be bold. Take a risk, use a weird sound. Do, if you're thinking you should be doing tension, do a version without any tension. Just see what happens. Because there might be some nucleus in there. Or if you think it should be overblown and an emotional cue for maybe a heartfelt scene, don't do that. that just let's flip things on the head, not do the obvious. That's what he always drives me to do. And I think you can hear that in some of these scores, that there'd be an obvious way to score that, and then there's a kind of Guy way, and they're not. Sorry, I'm going on here.
No, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
But also, he's got this insatiable thirst for rhythm. So anything kind of droney or soundscapey, which was a big thing in the kind of late 90s, noughties. A lot of scores were along that kind of more synthy vein, as we'd say,
right,
in the trade. He doesn't really like that. He doesn't respond to that at all. So I just kind of generally avoid that. But then the odd time, I'd be like, we need a drone. I'm like, here we go. It's drone time, baby. We can bring out the drone, which is because it's such a great device when you can use it. But sorry, what I was saying is he, as opposed to those kind of scores, even this sort of, you'll hear in film music a lot of long legato phrase strings and brass and woodwinds, and you can cover absolutely acres of footage with that stuff, and it's fairly quick to write and it's very effective.
Right.
But again, it doesn't really float Guy's boat. He prefers stuff with propulsion or a tick or a meter to it. Because he thinks very rhythmically, I think, especially with his editing. His editor, right, James, is very rhythmic editor. He's fantastic. And I think I'm part of that ingredient list. It's like, obviously, because it's music. Right. So my rhythm brings a lot to the table. So if you listen to a lot of the music I've done with him, it's very rhythmic.
Yeah. What I love
propulsion.
About it? Yeah, it does. And I'll tell you, your music, you couldn't be more eclectic, right? Because I feel like The Gentleman doesn't sound like The Covenant, and The Covenant doesn't sound like The Wrath of Man. Like the Gentleman's choral stuff, like we're gonna just dive into that in a second, is so amazing. Like, oh my God, we're watching the show, and I'm like, and I love the way it just kind of, it makes the characters so much either worse if we're talking about Freddie or it's just the way the music. Your music has a really wonderful knack of amplifying either if a character is just horrible doing that, or if a character is badass, it really amplifies that. So that's the real gift in your music, I think. I think there's a lot of it, but and I love the fact that you're not just this, like, because some composers, like, you could take any pieces of their music and put it in 10 different movies and it's the same kind of music, and that's fine. Like, it's very talented, but just using the 3 that are on the screen, I feel like they're completely different in the way they sound. But it sounds like 3 different composers, but that's, again, a testament to what you can do, and Guy's testament to let you kind of say, do your thing and have fun with it. Like, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head then. That's great that you recognize that. Yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing, isn't it? I think we tend to think a composer, an actor, an artist, whoever it is, has sort of got a vein, a niche that they want to fit in. But I love all music, right? So why only write in one particular way? I mean, actually, if you listen to all 3 scores, there are musical devices in there which are similar.
Right.
But you're right. The choral stuff in The Gentleman is a million miles away from the detuned cellos of Wrath of Man, which are kind of
big time
sound like death, right? Essentially,
yes.
It's sort of the death knell of cellos. So it was that, and I think that's the key. The key thing is trying to find. I always think of it as you've got to kind of unlock a film. You've got to kind of unlock the DNA of the film, right, to be able to write the music, and sometimes it takes longer than others. Sometimes, like with The Gentleman, I think it was really fast. We sort of found that style, loved it, and just rolled with it, and it was and it just kind of wrote itself. So the upcoming film, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is amazing. That took longer to find out what the kind of USP of the music was going to be.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited for people to hear that, because again, hopefully it doesn't fit into these 3 stools either. So that'll be interesting.
So I mentioned earlier, can a cast, so we talk about like just say Jason Statham, Matthew McConaughey, we'll say Jake Gyllenhaal. Can guys like that, Can they make the music? Can they add to the music and vice versa? We talked about vice versa, where I feel like your music is really added to the characters. But can the actors amplify the music? Is that a weird way of looking at it? Can they, like, I feel like Statham's a badass, but with the right music and Wrath of Man, he was incredible. Like, does it work the other way too, Chris?
What do you mean? Yeah, yeah, of course. What do you mean?
So,
are they making the music sound good, kind of thing?
Not to make the music sound good, but can the right actor, can the right actor make music? I guess bring it to another level, or is it?
Of course, of course. Yeah. Equally in the Covenant, there's that the performance by Jake is fantastic, right?
And Dar is so good too. Dar,
of course,
so good.
So between the two of them, that kind of that relationship there was so much to exploit there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So definitely. I think you could have the same music with different actors and it wouldn't work. I actually think that is totally true.
Because I was thinking about that.
It's not just the script. It's how the actor comes across, right? It's the nuance in the performance, and I think part of that is because before I composed, I was a music editor, which is a sort of unknown job really on films. It's a sort of slight kind of puppeteer job in the background, but a lot of that job is finding music to fit scenes for temp scores and stuff like that. So, I used to, like, when I was a kid, I really enjoyed like acting and being on stage and being part of theatre productions and stuff like that. So I think it's really useful to have that, because how you interpret someone's performance, is absolutely going to inform the music you write. So being able
to kind of a goofy question for me to ask you, but like I really was thinking about that take. Like so that song "Take on Me" by Aha, like the video, I feel like drove the music so much. Like, it was such a wonderful song, but drove that music. But if it was a video of just somebody driving in a car, like, I don't know, I just feel like it's almost like a marriage. I feel like, not make it better, not amplify, but almost like a marriage, right? Because Statham is perfect for your music. Like you and I grew up in roughly the same time period. We remember MTV with the videos were as important as what the music was showing. And I feel like the same in movies, right? You got to have all those right pieces to complement this wonderful score. That's how I look at it. Maybe I'm just being naive. I don't know.
Yeah, you are very naive. No, you're absolutely right. I think, you craft it around the actors. Ultimately, they're the heart and soul of a movie. And if you've recast the Covenant with different actors, the music probably wouldn't work. I don't know.
Right.
It's not always geographically dictated. It's like, oh, we're doing a film set in Afghanistan. Bring out the duck and make it kind of slightly, slightly different in sound. But I think you're right there. You're onto something.
I wish the music was more accessible too, because when I was reading some of the comments of your music, I just feel like they would make scores. They are available. Your work is available on iTunes. It's available on YouTube, but it's like such wonderful work. I just feel like sometimes you have to go digging for stuff, not just with you, but with other composers, but just like looking for your stuff. It was there, but I think people have this craving for it because there was thousands and thousands of views on all your work, all these wonderful tracks, and people were leaving the kindest things. I don't know. I just feel like scores are very important, but I feel like they should be even more. They should be magnified, because I'm just I don't know.
Oh, well, that's cool that you think that, because obviously you speak to a lot of people in different departments and different roles, so it's cool that you really appreciate how important the music is, which I think it is. Like, I always tell someone, if you watch the first cut of an action scene with no sound effects and no music, you would not watch that film. Like, it's just insane. It just transforms. Even sound effects again and sound design, massively transformative in like your experience of that film. It's amazing, and that's another thing to consider, is that I guess I think more than other composers, I try and almost think as the music as an element of the whole mix, because I know what that means. I know what it is. There's sort of there's an old school mentality, maybe in the 80s, 90s. You could write a massive cue a massive, got a 92-piece orchestra, really loud, and you can, and then there's some dialogue, so you just turn it down like 50 dB or whatever.
Right.
But I think we've got slightly more nuanced in the way we compose now, and I certainly try and write around every action and every kind of line of dialogue, really kind of craft the intensity and the volume and the texture of the music to fit the scene and the peaks and troughs of that. So I can't remember how we got onto that subject.
No, I don't know.
I've gone off piece, mate. I'm rambling now.
No, but I'm going to tell you this too. To add on to that, I think a great score can make an okay movie really good. And I'm not talking about something you've done, but just from my experiences over the course of years, it can make a movie fantastic. One of your earliest entries, you were, I think, a music editor on this, but Kingdom of Heaven is one of my favorite scores ever. Like, I think it's just such a I mean, that sucker makes no secrets about how great it is. It's just start to finish. That is pretty amazing work.
Yeah, it's Harry Gregson Williams, right?
Yeah, he's so good. Yeah, he's so good.
That was one of the first films I worked on, and it was insane, with Ridley Scott as well. And I agree. I love the music. It was so evocative. He used these viols, which are sort of, ancient violins, which actually have frets on them, so you don't really get vibrato. So it sounds a little more dead and a little more cold, which suited the film perfectly.
Perfect.
And the choir and just the scale of it, and it was fantastic music as well, and really memorable. It was an interesting journey, that one. I love that film.
I just want to ask you about a few pieces of these, because and when it came to The Covenant, I feel like Drunken Dream is just such a, there's so many iconic tracks. Like, how the hell do you create something that special? Like, it's such a freaking great track. Drunken Dream is so good. That's one of those ones you press play or on my iPhone. I own it, so I just hit repeat, and it's just like you can listen to that thing all
wicked,
day. Yeah. So there's a unique track that you really don't hear over the course of your cinematic viewing very often.
Exactly. There's a case in point. So literally, you can see the cellos there.
You are a cellist. So I know that for sure. Yeah.
I can play the cello. I wouldn't say I'm a cellist, but we were thinking along the lines of sort of kind of grunge music, and that kind of feel seemed to work quite well against the characters, and especially for Jake's character. So I literally that is a cello, but I put it on my knee like a guitar and kind of strummed it like a guitar. And I was in bands and stuff in my teenage years and tried to emulate Nirvana and bands like that. So it's kind of like bringing a bit of that quality to the score was really cool and enjoyable. And it just kind of was born out of just a few chords on the cello, really. And also, like, akin to what I was saying, Guy loves music which grows and really gets somewhere by the end of a track, for example. And I think that's a prime example. And he'll often say to me, "No, you've got, what's all these instruments? You got like 40 instruments in there." I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Just give me one instrument." And I'm like, so then I give him 10, and he's like, still one. And then like in the end, I'm like, he's right. One is more powerful. And I think that's something I've learned is again, because I'm born in the era of these massive scores, which had massive orchestras. Some of the most effective music is the most simple, right? And I think that was the key to that piece, was start with something so simple and so easy and so, normal in a way. It's just two chords, and let it grow from there.
It's a perfect way you put it too. Like, for somebody who's not musically, like, I don't always know all the musical lingo, but when you say grunge, it's so right on, because it does sound like a cinematic score, kind of a grunge to it. There's like a grittiness to it, and it's good. It plays so good on screen. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, if you listen closely, actually, do you know Muse, the band, the British band?
Yes.
Muse? Yeah.
Yes.
It's a big fan. And I'm doing a bit of a Matt Bellamy kind of at the end of it. You can hear it sort of very reverbed, but I got a bit carried away that day.
And we look at the most recent project, The Gentleman. Have you been getting a lot of positive feedback about that very unique score, right? Because sometimes TV scores kind of they're good, but they're not this is something different. This is something special, which I really love. Again, very different. Have you been getting a lot of positive feedback about this really unique score? I mean, this is almost like, I think, what was the show? 8 episodes. This is almost like scoring 8 movies. It felt
yeah. I think I wrote
8 wonderful movies, you know?
Oh, yeah. It was. I mean, it was. I've got a lot of feedback. Yeah, a lot of good feedback. In fact, more than I think anything I've done previously, to be honest. And I think it's and I think that's the kind of the Netflix phenomenon, though. You know, people kind of, I guess, to go and see a movie and seek out a movie now is not as easy as it was, or was sort of as trendy as it were. Whereas the kind of, people generally say now, what are you watching? What series are you watching? Not what films have you watched, or would you recommend? I mean, not always, but certainly amongst sort of friends of mine. So there was I could feel that people were sort of more impressed that I was doing this 8-part Netflix series than some of these other movies I've done, which I found fascinating. But yeah, there are so many responses, and from other composers as well, which means so much. And people kind of in the industry just saying, this is really great. And I didn't expect that necessarily. So it's amazing, really.
Chris, you know what I love? Like, sometimes people can sleep on a score in a TV show, whether it's Netflix or Prime Video. They can sleep on a score. Your music in The Gentleman does not let them. It slaps them in the face. Listen, they have no choice but to say, "Holy shit, that's an amazing piece of music." Yeah. Like, your music does not give them a chance to say, "Oh, okay, that was a nice arrangement." No. Your music says, "Listen to this." You
exactly, yeah. And that goes back to Guy. He's like, "Do something bold, be bold." That's his mantra. So even an inconspicuous piece of music has to be something more interesting, and that's what I live and die by, to be honest. It's like, how can we do something more interesting here?
The choral stuff was so good, like the way you used it, the alternate, like, oh my god, like, I mean, you don't see that a ton. You don't. What made you decide to go that route? Because I feel like it's just, I love choral stuff to begin with, but the way you did it's pretty unique.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, again, that was kind of taking some of the maybe earlier Renaissance stuff, that obviously inspired that sound, but kind of let's revamp it. Let's add a kind of Moog bass under it. Let's add some percussion and some other textures and instruments to it. But also the way I was writing was a little more. It was kind of like I think cool classical is what Guy sort of termed it at one point for other scenes that weren't choral as well. So it's kind of, how do we take some of this music as inspiration from the past, but kind of make it cooler and hookier and kind of dirtier?
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And fast forwarding to, talk about Wrath of Man, Liver, Lungs, Spleen, Heart. Talk about a track that has people talking and has people like just talk about how moved they were. That's it. I mean, that. And when I hear that grunge talk now, I feel like that's got a bit of that in that too.
Yeah, it has, and I think that's because, as I say, I loved grunge. I love rock music, so I've got a bit of. I remember I used to play in a youth orchestra when I was like, I don't know. I'll be corrected on this. Maybe 14, 15, 16, that sort of age. Maybe a bit older. Right. And the other kids would be there practicing Bach, and I'd turn up and I'd be playing Nirvana on my cello. Because I thought it was cool, right? So I didn't want to, I was like down on the cello. Everyone was like, "What's he doing?"
That is
so
great.
It's kind of in my DNA to kind of. I like music which just kind of has a thing to it,
Yeah. Are you when you watch your music on screen, Chris? Are you like, I know you're always, by nature, always, people kind of second guess their work. They're like, "Oh, I wish I did this or that." Is there ever a moment where like, I nailed it? That's like patting yourself on the back without sounding, I mean, I feel like, is there those moments? You have to have those moments, right? Where it's like, I nailed that. I did that. Like, do you give yourself permission to be okay with it? Like, I don't want to say, because I'm making it sound, I'm phrasing it like you're going to sound arrogant with whatever you're about to say, but that's not what I mean. I mean, like, I always feel like, people are hard on themselves. Is there ever opposite moment where you're like, I nailed that shit, I did that?
It's interesting because I often fall into that camp, and when I watch something I've done, I'm just, I'm sort of nervous and kind of trying to experience it through the people with me to see any reaction or whatever, especially if it's a big, a scene change and there's a big swell in the music. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
oh. But there was interesting. I never felt that consciously. Sometimes I think, oh, that's all right. But I think there was one of the middle episodes of The Gentleman. We sort of watched that in a run, and I thought that's actually pretty good,
right?
Because it had these themes and it was just, as you said, it's kind of unique, and that's the only time when I've consciously felt, oh, actually, I'm all right at this.
Yeah, good.
Because I think
good.
Well, because and also, I'm kind of new to the composing game, so having worked with some of the world's biggest composers over the last, 20 years, 15 years before I was composing, it's a high bar to set yourself against. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like imposter syndrome comes into it massively. It's kind of like, but the composers you just named are some of the biggest composers in Hollywood, right?
Yeah,
John Murphy and Hans Zimmer and all these people who've worked with Guy. So it's literally took me, a good 7 or 8, 9 projects to be like, to kind of own it and be kind of positive about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear
that. That was a tricky question, wasn't it?
Yeah,
you're very probing there, Derek. I liked it.
Yeah, I feel it's such a hard question to ask, but like I'm thinking to myself, and I was talking to my wife. We were watching the gentleman. We wrapped up the last episode. I want to say a couple of days ago. I was like, he's got to be so proud of this. Like, this is such a outside all this wonderful acting. Like, and I've already said this to you before, but I just love the way your music. It forces the person watching the show to take notice. Like, you can't not avoid. Like, there's many shows you could just kind of pass it by or kind of avoid the music or just go along with it. Not this show, and I love that. That's great, and that's why you and Guy are such a great team, because I feel like you're both on the same page with virtually everything you do.
Oh, cheers! Yeah, that's cool. I'll feed that back to Guy.
I'm sure he's happy that I approve. Yeah. Is there a track? Is there a track? Whether we're talking about we go back to the Holstead Manor or the Gentleman Titles, Meet Uncle Sam. Is there a track that you're particularly fond of in The Gentleman? Is there one that you're like, that took some time, but it came out okay?
Yeah, the one I actually really love is the Susie Glass. I think it's called Susie Glass theme, which is it's slightly more orchestral, and it's kind of pastoral, but there's a sort of simple melody, but I think it becomes a sort of a featured melody throughout the series as well, and hopefully in series 2 if there is one.
There's got
So yeah, for me that, and I played it a couple of months ago to my family. They were visiting, and they just loved it. They were like, "That's so beautiful." Like, and I think it was interesting what you said earlier about you wonder why film music isn't listened to more, or isn't higher up the pecking order, or isn't.
It should be as revered as like best actor, or like it's cinematography gets shit on in that way too. I feel like a little bit.
So you're talking in that sense, but
I'm talking the sense you're about to say too. I know what you're about to say.
I'm talking more about in the marketplace, but I think it's because a lot of the music isn't interesting enough for most people, especially in the kind of TikTok generation of 20 seconds is maybe I might just have a sort of intro tone for 20 seconds before the track starts. So I think part of the reason, film music isn't more in the sort of consciousness of everyone is because, well, 2 things. One, a lot of it is a bit vanilla and is quite just kind of sits in the background and doesn't lift its head above the parapet. But then that's an interesting thing, because sometimes the best film music, the best TV music doesn't reveal itself. It just does an awesome job of delivering a feeling or a sound or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like sometimes a lot of people get to the end of their film and be like, "Oh, I didn't even realize there was music in that." Well, that's because it's really good, in my opinion.
Yes.
So there's a bit of a kind of a dichotomy there of those two things colliding. But yeah, I do think The Gentleman, maybe more than anything else I've done, as pieces of music, sort of semi-classical music, they're sort of listenable, they're melodic, they have interest in them. So yeah.
And it's so diverse from everything else. Like, so I'll give you an example. Like of all the shows I see, like you said, like the music can sometimes be, it's not as bad, but it's just not memorable. Like The Gentleman, it's memorable. Like when I watch The Crown, Martin Phipps, who's been on the podcast, that's an amazing score. Like as great as The Crown is, his music makes you like turn and notice. You have no choice but to notice how great it is. So that's the stuff. When I watch a show, I want to come away with more than just a great plot or more than just a great actor. I want the music to hit me months later, like a year later. That's why I love scores. I love cinematics, and this is why I really am a big believer in your work. So
yeah, that's awesome. No, you're totally right. And for me, the last I know Martin as well, by the way. He's amazing. I thought White Lotus fell into that camp. It was such a distinctive, that Hawaiian sound was just absolutely fantastic. Like, it absolutely grabbed me. I was like, that's amazing. Like, that has never been done. That kind of music has never existed on TV in such a brilliantly executed way. And also the score music is one thing, but also there's lots of amazing choral music in that, where they're on the beach and stuff, which I think it isn't the composers. It's it's pre-existing music, but the way they married those two together was just, because you had the sort of pathos of this choral music, right, and the sort of emotional depth of that, but then the sort of crazy kookiness of the score. I thought it was just sensational. Like, I know what you mean, and to me, I keep I remember that. Sort of go around the house going, do, 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 do,
yes,
do, do. It's like 4 notes.
Yeah, it's Chris. It's being able to go on a run or do work and have. So like I'm listening to Wrath of Man. That came out in 2020. I'm still listening to your music. Like The Covenant was last year, but I listen. But I want the music to sit with me long after, and that's when a piece of music composition is hits home and it's really good. Is when you're thinking about it years after it's been released. So that's very special. So thank you for that.
Yeah, cool.
I have 2 last things for you. So I wanted to read you these YouTube comments I've been talking about, right?
Oh God.
So this one's for Wrath of Man, for liver, lung, spleen, and heart. This soundtrack brought this movie to my top 5. Like, he loved this guy, whoever wrote it, loved the movie, but the music escalated it for him. Top 5. On Drunken Dreams, this guy I would say is slightly moved. This music feels like I swear to God, I'm not making this up. Their comments are there. This music feels like it's awakening a primal ancient fire within my core. That's what this guy says. I swear to God. But this is what I'm saying. Like, I challenge anybody. Go to any of your music or music that means a lot to people. Look at, because usually comments are a bad place to get reference for anything, right? It's funny how movie scores are a little different. People, like, I love to read people that have had that fire lit under them where they're like, shit, the music is great, and it's I don't know. I'm gushing and gushing and gushing.
No, that's cool. No, there was one comment I read. I haven't read many, but there was one. I think it was for the Wrath of Man, the kind of title cue. And someone was like, I listen to this every morning before work, and it puts me in beast mode, something like that.
There you go.
I remember that, because to think that someone is something I've produced, someone's gone, I love that so much, I'm going to listen to it every single day before I go to work to get me fired up.
Right.
That's like, what? That's insane.
Yeah, and like, look, not with your work, but like there's been scores, Chris, where it's like the movie has been okay, maybe not memorable, but the soundtrack is just outshines everything, and that lives on. So it's almost sometimes its own beast. My last thing for you. So you mentioned a future project. You have the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. What is the release date on that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think it's very soon. The premiere is the 15th of April in New York.
Oh my God, that's like here. Oh wow.
So it's coming in hot, that one. I think it's the 17th would be the cinematic release, I believe. But yeah, should be playing in all cinemas then.
Oh, what can you say about that? Anything?
Go see it. No, it's exciting.
Oh man, I am psyched for that. And the other one I wanted to ask you was a non-Guy Ritchie project, and that's The Gun on Second Street. Is it weird having done so many things with Guy and then working with somebody else? Not in a bad way, but like, does it take adjusting, because a lot of your work has been a collab with, one of the greatest directors alive. I mean, and now you're working with somebody different who's very talented. But is it an adjustment period? Is it?
Yeah, it's different for sure. But it's nice to get a different perspective and a different kind of relationship, that's still a sort of work in progress, that one. And I did another film called Rupture with Hamzah, and I loved writing that score, and he was just a very different directorial style to Guy. No one's not better than the other.
Gotcha.
But he was much interested in very different things to Guy, which is interesting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I could do some stuff that I wouldn't dare do with Guy. If you see what I mean.
Right.
And experiment in different ways. And I think it's that's exciting. I'm excited to work with other people as well. Yeah.
We talked about Kingdom of Heaven earlier, and you have an amazing filmography. Do you feel like you've scored, I think, 11 or 12 movies on your own, but do you think that process as you progressed, Chris, do you think working with all those unbelievably talented composers was better than any school you could have gotten? Any, like, that experience of working with that many high level people, like, did you feel like it really paid off to where you are today?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was the best education I could have ever got in music, in film music, writing music to picture. And it was unbelievable. I spent many years with Patrick Doyle, who's an absolutely amazing composer, and I learned so much from him. We did lots of big movies like Thor together and stuff like that. He did, sorry, a Pixar movie. But just to be part of that process and to see how it's done, and to be there on day one with the composer when they've got a blank page and they're like, okay, let's write a score, go. That's the tricky bit. But because I'd actually seen someone do that, it kind of, I thought, it's possible, right? I think if you gave Wrath of Man to someone who maybe hasn't experienced that, that'd be quite daunting, and it would hem you in a bit. But I think the fact that I'd seen others write these amazing scores kind of felt like a gift to me. Really, it was amazing.
And that those Pixar stuff, especially your work, the Pixar stuff in general, another place where I feel like scores are so underappreciated, because I've been rewatching all this stuff with my young daughter, and holy cow, the music is so amazing in so many of these animated works. It's like, I hope people are noticing how special it is. Not just the vocal stuff, the lyrical stuff, the scores, they're so special, Chris.
Oh yeah, completely. Like the Toy Stories of Randy and stuff. It's just, I mean, I agree. It is special, and there's such room. It's such a specific genre that there's so much scope for music in those movies that it's kind of exciting territory to be in, I think.
Yeah, and this will be the last thing I say.
No.
There was I just finished the movie Soul yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was so stunned to see who scored it. It was Trent Reznor, and it was he did oh god, what's his name? He's so popular. He did the Book of Eli. Oh shit. Again, I couldn't believe, because Trent Reznor's background, I couldn't believe.
Yeah, exactly. You'd think Trent Reznor wouldn't write that, exactly, because we all think of the stuff he's done, the kind of hard
Atticus Ross.
Yeah. Exactly.
I could not believe it the way it sounded, Chris. I couldn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think people think if you're a musician, you can only deal with one genre. It's like, that's the interesting thing. I'll give a little bit away. In Ministry, some of the music's quite jazzy that I've written, and so that's it has slight jazz elements in there at times. So again, it's a different sound, it's a different concept. And again, I used to be in big bands. I played guitar in big bands. I even sang at in our university big band. So there's all these different genres, and I think it's, people like it if people just stay in their lane, don't they, and just kind of deliver the same thing, because it's kind of predictable and people can deal with that. But when you then go, but what about this? Everyone's like, ooh, it's getting a bit spicy.
Yeah. Aside of being able to speak to like composers whose work I just love, like yourself, I get to learn too, man. So like, thank you for this. Like, I really appreciate it, and I love your work.
Pleasure.
I'm looking forward to the future because I know how bright it's going to be for you. So, man, you're welcome back anytime, and thank you for this, Chris. You're super talented.
No, it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure, and I hope I haven't, I don't know, just waffled on about musical terminology.
No, man, I learned so much, man. Like, I love it. To me, this is like my class. I learn.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, thank
pleasure,
you.
absolute pleasure. Well, no, it's a fantastic podcast. Thanks for asking me on.